All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. So we'll get started first. Thank you all for showing up. And now, okay. So hopefully you all have already set up your Google Cloud accounts. If you haven't already, please set it up according to the instructions here because this is what we'll be using today. And yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely be needing this to deploy our model onto Google Cloud so we can access it from a situation like outside of Google Colab. All right, so we'll get started. So first up, yeah. So today we have the teaching team. We have myself, I'm Joseph. Then with me, I have Guang Yang, year one data science and analytics student, and Glenn, a year two data science and analytics student. Okay, so today we'll be going through four main things. So we'll be going through how to deploy on Google Cloud Platform. Afterwards, Guang Yang will take us through why we're deploying and also why we're not using other platforms or Docker. And finally, I also talk about how to set up IAM service accounts. These are like permission settings to keep your model deployment safe when you're on Google Cloud. So yes, once again, Google Cloud is a big point of this workshop. So please have it set up if you haven't already. Okay, so just a quick recap on the previous workshops if you were there. So far, what we've gone through is that we've gone through things like data pre-processing. So afterwards, we've gone through some model training and tuning. Then we've gone through some lessons on Docker containers. So these are things that so Docker containers can help with the deployment, but today we'll not be using them. We'll go into more depth on why we're not using our own Docker containers later. And finally, we're going into model deployment today. All right, so now let's get started on how can we actually deploy the model. So okay, this is why we need to go to the Colab notebook. In your pre-workshop materials, you will have this Python notebook here. Please upload it onto Google Drive. So yes, please upload it onto your Google Drive, and ideally to the same account that you used to sign up for your Google Cloud platform. All right. So yeah, I'll give you all a minute or two to upload this onto Google Drive. Yes, so just take some time to upload it. And along the way, for those of you who are here physically, if you have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand. For those of you who are online, please just leave the questions in the chat and we'll try to respond as soon as we can. Yes. I'm not really familiar with the platforms. Even I even know how to upload. Okay, sure. Yeah, Glenn will help you with that. No worries. So oh no, yes. Oh no, just to note, you're uploading the notebook onto Google Drive. Google Drive. Yeah, it's not Google Cloud. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, just to clarify, we're uploading this onto Google Drive, not to Google Cloud. The Google Cloud platform will come later, but this is just the usual Google Drive. Just upload it. Just the notebook. Just the notebook. Yeah. So yes, you can. So if you have your notebook here, yeah, So just go to your any Google Drive. Then afterwards, you just upload it here, right? Then yeah, you should be able to access it from Google Drive itself, right? Yeah. I cannot open it after I upload. If you all have having difficulties online, please raise it in the chat as well.
This one and this one? Yeah.
Right, so you're able to get to the screen, right? Okay, cool. Okay, once you're at this screen, right? So you see this sidebar here. Yeah, you have this folder over here. Okay, yeah. You just click it, it'll connect you to the notebook. So yeah, once you're we wait for let's wait for this thing to be connected, right? So afterwards we can upload some stuff here. Okay, yeah. So yeah, once you reach this screen, and you've connected your notebook, you can either click connect here or just click on this folder over here and you'll connect you automatically. So what's going to happen is that you can upload. Now we can upload the files in the pre-workshop materials. So go to your pre-workshop materials, and in there you have the model H5 file alongside the test.json. Just upload these two and just click OK here. It just means that because what you have here is a temporary like storage area on this collab notebook session. So once you log out from the collab notebook, these files will be gone, but they'll still remain on your PC. So don't worry about that. Yeah. So once again, just go to here and click on this on the sidebar, the folder, go to this upload button here. Afterwards, you want to upload these two files, right? Okay, right. So let's just wait a while for it to upload. Meanwhile, okay. Yeah, and yes, Wi-Fi is taking a while for me. Okay, meanwhile, right? Okay, so let's run some lines of code. At least let's run the first one. So what the first one does is that it's an authentication process. So right now we want to connect this notebook to our account here, which we use to sign up for the Google Cloud Platform. Okay, so let's just yeah, you can run this code by just yes. Okay. Oh yeah, you can run this code by just clicking here, or you can just on MacBook it's command return. I think on Windows it should be something like control enter or something. Once you get here, just allow, and then just let it just click on the account that you used to sign up for the Google Cloud Platform. So this establishes a connection between this notebook and everything you have on the cloud platform and your Google Drive as well. Yeah, so yes, please go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, yeah, I'll just wait one last bit for the model to be uploaded. So once again, you can use your own model as well. While throughout this thing, if you have your own H5 file from previous workshops, you can upload it here and just rename it. Rename the model accordingly that you uploaded, or else you want to just use the sample model we have. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, so yeah, for those here physically, is your upload done already? Cool. Okay, great. All right, so now we can run this line of code as well. This will load in the model, and it will change the way the model is saved. So previously it's saved in a H5 format. Now it will be changed to a format that's more compatible with the way Google Cloud Platform accesses the model. Yeah, so once we have that, then we can continue running these lines of code. We can run this one. Okay, so here, before we get to this one, you need to come up with a project name. So the project name that will give it, you won't set up the project from here. In fact, this is where I need you to go to the Google Cloud Platform first. Okay, so when you're at this screen, what you need to do is that up here, you actually start with something like my first project. Yeah, so Let's start with my first project, but let's not use that. Let's just create a new project. Let's give it a new name. We can call this, up to you. I'll call my model deployment tutorial. Okay, so you can call it whatever you want. Yeah, but if you want to be consistent, you can go with this as well. Once you've typed in the name, just create it. Right here, just quickly. Okay, so sometimes you might have some issues with the okay, this so somehow if the name clashes, just come up with a different name. This one, okay, I'll just call it model deployment. Yeah. Tutorial 2. Okay, maybe it needs an identifier. Okay, okay, that gives it a while. Yeah, so if you have any errors, yes, just try to work with the name a bit, because sometimes there might be some name clashes. So yeah, right. So once it's created, you can see it as we saw from just now from notifications. It's created successfully. That means you can access it from select your project. Right. So once you get to this page, what you need to do is just copy this project ID. Okay. You do not copy this. This is not your ID. This is the project ID that allows the platform and Google Colab to know what project you're actually working on. Just copy it, then paste it here. Okay. Yes. Okay, so yeah, once again, if you run into any problems, feel free to just type in the chat. Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, okay. Right, so once we have that, so what's going to happen is that we're going to set some, just going to define some names here for convenience. So we can run this code as well. What this does is that it just sets a couple of variables. And now this one is where it gets important. So here it's going to try to connect. So this is a command that goes from Google, the notebook itself is going to try to connect to this cloud platform here. So it just says that to configure the environmental variable in Google Cloud, you set the project environmental variable to this project name that we have here, right? So try to run this, and yes, it should give you something like this if it's successful, right? Yeah, so what we've done is that now we've successfully point whatever we're doing in this notebook to the Google Cloud Platform. Okay, now here we're going to create a bucket. So a bucket is just like a storage. So here on the notebook, we have something like this temporary file storage system. A bucket is more permanent on the platform. So this is you can just run this. It will just create a bucket for you, meaning you just create a storage. And this is just notion of a bucket is quite common across other platforms like AWS as well. All right. So once we have this, now this line of code will help us save our model onto the platform. So what this does is that once again, it just loads it up the model. Then afterwards, this time round is saving to this bucket directory that we have. All right. So give it a while. It needs some time to connect to the bucket. Yes. So this might take maybe 5 to 10 seconds, depending on your Wi-Fi speed. Yeah. Okay. So there's a warning here. Don't worry, this is because the way the model is constructed, there are like some custom namings in there, but it's actually fine. So no, don't need to worry about that. So once it's done running, what you can see is that from here you should be able to look at your cloud storage. So on your left side, if it's not already pinned, you can look under more products. There should be a cloud storage area. So there's storage, and then you can go into buckets, and you will see that, hey, this is what you've just uploaded. And you should see something like this, right? If you don't see something like this, feel free to raise it up in the chat or approach any one of us for help, okay? Okay, so once you have this, now, great. Our model, what this means is that if we go inside, you see that this fashion model that we've created just now. So note that just now we named the model to be fashion. And here we have this model, and it contains all the files, the variables, the assets, all these. These are the same files that you can find on on the collab notebook as we have saved it just now, right? So these are the same files and you can find them over here. So that means we have a model up there, right? Great. So once we have that, let's go back to the dashboard. And now we go back to the collab notebook as well. What we'll do is that we'll use this line of code to tell the cloud platform to create a model for us. So what we have is that we stored our model up there, but now it's creating a different model on Google Cloud platform itself, right? Based on the data that it has from us. So just type Y for yes here, because this will just allow it to access the API that you'll be using. This is a machine learning API. So it's like a particular tool on Google Cloud that will allow you to access this type of AI and machine learning stuff. Right, so once again, it'll take a while to load. Just type Y, as I mentioned just now. And once you're done, you should get something like this, right? So there should be no warnings and it'll just tell you that it's created a platform. Okay, so once you have that, once again, we can check it for correspondence. So whatever we've done here so far is linked to this Google Cloud platform here. So once again, if you haven't pinned it, AI platform, this time you have to scroll down a bit more. It's all the way at the end here. Yeah, I don't know why artificial intelligence starts with an A, but it's all the way down there. All right. So you can just go into this AI platform here. And yes, and then load a bit and you see that, hey, you have this model called fashion over here, right? You should be able to see that. So yeah. So far, everything else, don't worry about it. This online prediction error rate, there's nothing much going on here because we've only thus far just created a skeleton for the model. Like this model isn't working yet. We just have a skeleton for it. So now this is where we get to creating a version for the model. So this is useful because in actual deployment, you have many iterations of the model. You might have different things like maybe you have like the first stage. Then afterwards, you have like the next stage. You've made some improvements. You tune it a bit more. So this platform allows you to create multiple versions. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to, on this model page, yeah. Okay, yeah, so we'll just go into, we'll just click on this model here, this fashion model here, just click on it. And then here you'll see you can create a version. All right, so we'll create a version. So this, what this does is actually it'll create a couple of things. You'll create the container for us. You also create an instance. So an instance is like just having, just allocating particular computing power for this particular version of the model to make it, to have it activated. So what we'll do here is firstly, let's give it a name. To standardize, please call it V1. If you change this name here later, you need to make some changes here. It's perfectly fine. But actually it should be fine, but let's just call it V1 for consistency, okay? You can give it any description you want, this first model. Yeah, this is fine. This is optional. Then we'll use a pre-built container. So a custom container would be something like a Docker container that you build from scratch and you upload it onto here. But what we're going to do is that we're going to tell the cloud platform that, hey, we're going to use your pre-built container to keep things simple, all right? Okay, so now pre-built settings, let's just choose the latest Python version. The framework, notice that we're using TensorFlow, as you can see from the model we've loaded in. So this is a TensorFlow model. There are other frameworks like scikit-learn or XGBoost, but in this case, we're using TensorFlow. The version, just pick the latest one. Runtime version, there's only one option there. And now this is the important bit. So here, this is what we did just now, right? We uploaded the model. So far, we haven't done anything about that upload. So this is where we access the model that we've uploaded into the storage, the bucket, and you don't click on this one. You go one directory deeper to access that particular model. So this is like a directory for all the possible models you could have. You could have fashion 1, fashion 2, you can have fashion, you can have you have cars, different models who do different things. So we need to pick the specific model that we want to do a fashion type of classification. So this is the model that we have, right? So yes, this model is called fashion. If you weren't here for previous workshops, this is because this model is trained to identify different pieces of clothing, all right? And later we'll actually get to see that in action. Okay, so once we get to this stage, now we can look at the online prediction deployment part. So for scaling, just pick auto scaling. What this does is that in the real world, if let's say on average, you have like you know that you're expecting maybe 5 users to connect like every 1 minute. So you just keep the number of nodes, which is like the number of CPUs or computers serving this model. You keep it rather low because only 5 users per minute. But somehow, maybe like you get like a spike. Maybe you get 20 people per minute or like 50 people per minute, like in like the next the next hour. Then you scale it up automatically for you so that you can meet the traffic. But for this case, we'll just keep it to the minimum because we want to minimize the use of our credits. So we'll just keep it to a minimum, just a pet hobby type of project. So we can keep it to a minimum. And for the machine types, these are like the computers. So you can see there are like different names here. There's like, we'll just pick the standard one. They're also high memory, high CPU, meaning they give you more space. This gives you more computing power. For now, we just take the standard one and pick the lowest one as well. So they give you 2 virtual CPUs. vCPUs mean virtual CPUs. So they give you like two virtual CPUs to work with and 7.5 GB of memory, right? Accelerator, we won't be needing any of these. Usually you'll need this if the model is big and they have a lot of, or you need the predictions to be super fast. Service account, we'll leave it blank for now. We'll come back to this later as well. So once you have all the setting, name it V1, pre-built container, Python version, framework, everything set up. Make sure your model URI points to the correct place where the model is loaded in. So make sure it's here. And then once we have that, for this scaling, just go according to the settings. A more comprehensive description of this can be found here actually. So we have, so there's a much more complete explanation of what each of the terminologies mean. And here we can just click save, right? Okay, so what's going to happen is that now this thing will be creating a particular version, a particular instance of this model that can actually be accessed outside of Google Cloud, outside of the notebook. Later, we'll see how we can access this from a Python web app. But for now, this will take around 10 to 15 minutes to load. So I'll pass the time to Guang Yang to go through the next part of the workshop. All right, Guang Yang, please.
Thank you, Joseph. Hi, my name is Guang Yang, and I'll be going through the why we deploy, as well as why we're not using AWS and Docker. So first of all, why do we deploy? So I would just like to point your attention towards the Heroku app we have here. So if we access this, you'll see that it's a clothing recognition app. So if we want to get like a picture, so
sneakers.
For example, if we want to have a picture of sneakers and we want the model to actually try and recognize that it's a sneaker, we can just submit that. And ta-da, item, sneaker, confidence 99%. So back to the slides itself. Why do we exactly deploy? The thing about deployment is that, sure, we have this machine learning model that is really powerful. It can detect a lot of things. But the thing is that if we don't deploy it, no one else will be able to use it. This is also the reason why you're able to use stuff like ChatGPT and other AI stuff as well. So if you are interested in like generative AI, that's how people deploy Stable Diffusion and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, but this is just a basic understanding of why we deploy. So your next question will be, okay, so I know why we deploy now, but why not Docker? So here's the problem with Docker. Let's start off with TensorFlow. So this model itself is trained on TensorFlow, and TensorFlow itself is really big. It's like 2 gigabytes. So let's say if we are really insistent, we want to put TensorFlow on Docker. Sure, we can do that, but it is bad practice to do so because the Docker container itself is going to be really huge. Docker itself is meant to containerize stuff, and it's not meant to be that big. It's meant to be more compact. So that's the problem with Docker. And when we go to the AWS side, the microservice that's used alongside Docker is actually quite hard to interact with. And there are other things that we can use as well, but this is where we go on to the next part, where why not AWS? So To demonstrate this, let's compare AWS and GCP itself. If you realize, even though both AWS and GCP have a lot of microservices, right? AWS actually has a really complicated interface to interact with. So as someone that is probably new to deployment, chances are you probably wouldn't know what you're doing on AWS. Even I myself, who has deployed a few projects, I still don't know what I'm really doing on AWS, but it's a lot easier on GCP because they are taking a lot of the backend stuff and they are simplifying it for you. And also, if you realize, in GCP, there's built-in TensorFlow. As shown just now by Joseph, we can just like upload our model and then GCP takes care of the rest. However, for AWS, we don't necessarily have that. What we have instead is that we have to use TensorFlow serving, which is TensorFlow, but it's specifically meant for deployment. And with TensorFlow serving, that comes with a lot of other problems that we have to fix. Therefore, we decided to use GCP for this workshop, as there's not a lot of time that we have when it comes to AWS. So I'll pass my time back to Joseph, and he'll go through the setting up of IAM service accounts.
Okay, thanks, Kwang Yang. Okay, just to add on a little bit more, one more thing is that once again, AWS GCP, AWS is a bit more complicated. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just that when something needs to be complicated for customizability. So GCP actually allows this type of customizability as well, but we're not going to explore that today. But it's just that AWS is also it's complicated because it's very customizable. So in a way, we're not saying that objectively one's better than the other in like a large scale, in like a corporate project. But here for learners' purposes, it's easier to get started with GCP. And for TensorFlow serving, one of the very concrete problems that I ran into is that it doesn't support the latest M1 and MacBook AIM chips. So it makes it very complicated for people who are using that device as well. Right, so now let's have a look at whether a model is done. If it's not, then we'll move on to this section, or else we can have some fun exploring the model a bit. Okay, so once again, you come back here. And if it's still like creating here, like what you see on my screen, don't worry, it's normal. So this is why we also want to go through something else, which is that now, okay, so imagine once you have this, the model is outside, but what kind of applications have access to it, right? So we need a way to make it such that, like let's say I've created the model, but I want to be the only one who can access it. And I don't want Kwang Yang to be able to access it without my authorization. Because when you create models like this, let's say on a large scale, an application makes like 1,000 or like 10,000 predictions a day with this model, that could incur charges. And you want to be the one to be able to control who's making this type of prediction and what type of apps are allowed to do that. So this is where we have this type of permission settings, and they are known as IAMs. These are IAMs. Let me see if I have the full thing spelled out here. Yes. So IAMs are just a particular permission role. It gives them access to certain features, okay? So yeah, let's just have a look at how we can set them up. So while we wait for the model to be completely deployed. So here, okay, on your navigation menu, on the left sidebar, you should be able to find IAM and admin, okay? Once again, if somehow it's not already pinned, you need to go through this, but yeah, it's just under more products, the first one you'll find here. Okay, so let's just click onto this. Okay, so now what we need to do is that we need to create a new, role. So here, okay, this is, okay. We need to create a new role. Hold up. Okay, let's see what the tutorial says here. There's supposed to be a, yes, okay, we need to go to service accounts, yes. Okay, so what we're creating is, apart from the IAM, we're looking at a particular service account, all right? So over on your left side, you'll see a service account here. So click on that. And here we can create a new service account. So a service account is just a new particular account that is dedicated to do a specific task, okay? So now let's just give this a name. We can call this, so I'll just call this get prediction because this is what the account is meant to do. You can give it whatever name you want. That's perfectly fine. I'll just call it get prediction. So only used to get prediction from model. Okay, so just give it a name, then you just create it. The description is optional once again. Now, once you've created it, we need to select a role. So when it comes to like deployment, we want to compartmentalize everything as much as possible. You want to make it such that someone with access to, so someone should only have the minimum privilege. They should have the least amount of permissions to do what they have to do, right? So here we'll create a role, and this role would come under this AI platform here. So under by product or service, you see this AI platform, and then go to AI platform developer, okay? You don't want it to be a viewer because it will be too low of a permission, but if it's an admin, you have access to do too much stuff. So we would just want it to be a developer where, as you can see, it can send online predictions and also train it and other things. But for this purpose of the workshop, we will not need it to train it. So we just need this AI platform developer. Once you have this, just continue. Then here, this is optional. We do not need this as well. So we'll just leave it to be done. Okay, so now great. Once you have this, okay, so this creates a new service account on the Google Cloud Platform. Now look at, go to actions here. You see these 3 buttons. What we're gonna do is that we're gonna download. We're gonna look at something called keys, okay? So let's look at manage keys. So this is like a key is like an authenticator. It's like something, it's like a unique identifier. So let's just create a new key. And we're creating in the form of a JSON file, okay? So let's just create this, right? So this key, you'll say is saved to your computer once you created it, right? Yeah. So once you have this, do not delete this, do not lose this. The only time you can download this key is upon creation. If you lose this, so suppose in my download file, I lose this JSON file here, you can never download this again. You have to delete this key and then recreate a new one. Okay, this is for safety purposes. All right, so here, once you have this key, right, what we're gonna do is that let's just have a quick look at a model whether it's complete. If you're not, we'll move on to the next portion first, don't worry. So let's just quickly have a look. So here, okay, because it varies every time on how long this could take. Yeah. So yeah, it's still creating, so no worries. Let's just move on to how we can set up this type of keys for, let's say, a web app project. Okay, so now hopefully you guys have PyCharm on your laptop. If you don't, if you're using other VS Code or something like that, that's perfectly fine as well. But I need you to open. So what you need to do is just go to open and you choose, you go to wherever you save the workshop materials and you open this web app that we've provided you with. Okay, and then you just open it here. All right, so make sure that it's, right. So this is on your local computer. This is not done on Google Drive or anything like this. This should be on your local computer, okay? So in the, once again, in the pre-workshop materials that we've sent you, once you've extracted it, you can just open the web app from the pre-workshop materials, okay? So once again, just go to, from your project in whatever IDE you're using, just, so here, you just need to open the project, and then you just need to open the one that you just create, that you just that's inside this pre-workshop material file. Okay, so just open this. Yeah. All right. So here, you'll see that if you're using PyCharm, you tell that okay, there's no interpreter, so just set it up. Just add a new interpreter. Yes. So this one, it depends on your own IDE, okay? And if you're using command prompt or VS Code or anything, you can go to inside our pre-workshop materials. We've given you inside the setup instructions, there's a detailed instruction on how you can set up the virtual environment. So virtual environment is just like a part where you can install different Python dependencies without affecting other projects, okay? So in a way, it's it kind of like contains everything you need for this particular project. So in our case, it's quite simple. Yeah, if you're using PyCharm, it should be able to do everything for you. It'll create a virtual environment for you. And once you have that, you just go to the terminal, and then you just copy this line of code here to install all the requirements. Okay. So you can just do this, and what you'll do is that you'll install everything that is needed for this project. Okay. So if you have any problems, feel free to raise it in the chat or approach any of the teaching team here. Yeah. So yeah, once again, you want to open this project and then create a virtual environment for it, and then load in all the dependencies. You want to load in everything you need for this project. Okay. I'll give you all maybe 2-3 minutes to do this. Meanwhile, let me just check if the model is done being created. Yeah. So we're troubleshooting some stuff. Yeah, we're helping to set up some stuff on the physical side. So if you're online, if you have any difficulties as well, please raise it in the chat. Else, just please be patient. Thank you, and we'll get back to the workshop in a bit because we're troubleshooting some setup for some of the students here. Okay, for those of you who are done, right? So that's just something that's quite interesting that you can try out, which is that under your model, while we're waiting, right, we can go to test and use, okay? So just, yeah. If you still need time setting up, feel free to just set up first. This is just something for those who are done. What you can do is you can go to a test.json here, okay? Just go to a test.json, copy everything. Just Command A or Control A, copy everything, paste this here. And then we can chuck it in and let it do it. And then you'll see that you actually get a prediction, which is correct because the last one is supposed to be 1, okay? Right, so yes, this actually, what you can play around with this. So you can, later we'll see how this links to the notebook as well. But this is where what's happening is that we are just uploading our test data. This is actually an image in an array form. We're uploading it onto this service here, and it's giving us a prediction on what it thinks it's supposed to be. All right. Okay. So to see this in more detail, so what we can do is that we can go back to the collab notebook. Let's go back to the collab notebook, and we can see this in more detail. So what you need to do here is that at this stage, right, you see these variable names that are empty. Of course, you can type them out manually, but here you can just go to, once again, to get here. For those who've missed it, you just go to this version that's already created, and then you go to test and use. Under sample prediction request, you copy all this. Okay, copy all this data. Then you can just paste it over here. We do not need the input data file because we've already loaded this in. Once you have this, just run this. Afterwards, we run this next line of code. This is some boilerplate code, which you can also find. I did not come up with this. You can actually find everything here, okay? Just a side note, yeah, for whatever reason, they do not include the import for client options. So I included this up here, or else your code will actually error out. So this is a function that will help you to connect to the cloud, the model on the cloud, send your prediction, send your data over, and retrieve the prediction from it, okay? So what we're gonna do is that, remember we've uploaded this test.json, right? So let's have a look at what this test.json is. And if you run this, you'll see that this is an ankle boot. So it's like a shoe, okay? So this is the image that we are asking it to predict or classify. And now let's see if you can actually do it. So these instances, this is what we would call the thing that we're sending over, the data we're sending over to the cloud platform. And then these are just some boilerplate code to translate the predictions. So we get the prediction and we get the result, okay? So because once again, if you recall here, the prediction that we saw over here, right? The prediction comes in this very ugly format. It comes in this, a lot of decimals, yeah, and then in this weird JSON format. So it's very friendly for developers, but it's not friendly for people to just read, right? So you can just, what we'll do is that we'll translate everything. This code takes care of it, and then you can just run it, and it'll tell you that the result is indeed an anchor book. So what we've done so far is that we've proven that, hey, this is actually something that is online. We can access it. Once again here, right? We realize that nothing here touches our preloaded model. So we're actually getting this prediction live. All right. So the next part of this, yes, the next part of this will be to be able to access this model outside of Collab Notebook. So far we've done everything on Collab Notebook, but we're not going to build a software entirely on Collab Notebook. You might use Python, you might use Java, you might use JavaScript, different type of backends, different type of platforms, but you still want to be able to get predictions from the machine learning model that you've deployed. Okay, so now this is where we go back to this JSON file. Okay, so now let's go back to the JSON file that we've downloaded. Okay, so just yeah, open it up. We're using whatever editor you can use. Yeah, here I'm using a version of VS Code. You can open up in PyCharm as well. It's perfectly fine, or some variants of Notepad works as well. But what's going to happen is that you'll see that inside the JSON file, right, it contains like all this information. And this information is like a unique identifier for the service account that we've just created just now. So it's a way to tell. So it contains all this stuff, like they're like passwords. So let's say you want to log on to the account, to connect to a service account that we've just created. These are all like the identifiers, all the passwords you need for Google to clearly know that, okay, this is a legit user who has the sufficient clearance and privilege and through knowing the password to be able to access this service account and do what the service account is supposed to do, right? So you'll copy this information into this web app project that we have, okay? So let's go here and you see this .env file. This .env file, double click it, is a special file known as an environmental variable file. So it contains everything that we will need, that we want to store, but notice that these are confidential actually. If you think about it, they're called private keys for a reason, because these are things that you do not want other people to have access to. Once again, as I said, if everyone has access to this, that means everyone can access the model that you've created, and that would be very bad. But the issue is that how do we store these then? Because oftentimes when you deploy stuff, you want to put them onto GitHub. You want to put them onto public repositories, or even if you make them private, you upload them onto GitHub, and then maybe GitHub gets hacked. And then they might accidentally leak out all this information that could be detrimental if you're doing a large-scale project. So we want to keep these as safe as possible, which is why if you do upload this onto GitHub, you will never upload the .env file. For all the platforms that you can serve on, let's say for other platforms like Heroku or like different types of web service platforms like AWS or even GCP, they have their own web serving microservices. They'll have a section on where you can just copy and paste all these environmental variables for them to safeguard. We won't go through that. That's a bit beyond the scope of this workshop, but just know that these environmental variables, they're supposed to be kept safe, and this should not be made public, which is why that's very much suitable to contain information that you want to be kept private, right? So what I need you all to do is that copy each of them correspondingly, okay? So I've already made it such that on the .env file, the type this type should correspond to here. It's just conventional, make everything caps. So just copy the content. For example, the type is a service account. So I'll copy the service account over, and then I'll copy the project ID. Yeah, you guys get the idea, okay? So just copy everything over. You'll have enough information up to this client X509 search URL, okay? We'll copy the rest later. So just get this part done first. Copy everything over. Okay. Yeah, I need to copy mine over as well. So just take note, the private key is actually super long. So this is like the main password if you want to think about it that way. So to copy it, yeah, you just need a bit of cleverness. Just copy it over, then make sure at the end you get rid of the double quotations. It should be single quotes all the way. Right. The rest should be pretty straightforward. So just copy and paste this over. Give you all maybe 2-3 minutes to do this. Right, yeah. So once you have this, just wait for a while. Let's just wait for 1 more minute. So actually, once you've copied and pasted this, you can either just keep this file secure here, or you can delete it if you want, but just make sure you have at least one copy of all the information that you need here, okay? So because once you lose it, like I said, you can never download it again unless you create a new key. This is for security purposes. All right, so once you're done copy and pasting, okay, hopefully everyone's more or less done with that. Now I'll explain so there's not much to explain. These are pretty self-explanatory, but explain what this Google application credentials is, why it's saved in this way. So actually you can make this whatever you want. I call it secrets.json. You can call it secrets2. You can call it confidential. You can call it private key, whatever you want, but I'll just call it secrets.json for now. So what's gonna happen is that the way this code is written, so it takes everything here and eventually it convert this into a JSON file, but afterwards under authentication handler, this is a bit complicated, but just for those of you who are interested, what it does is that it just outputs a JSON file, gets the program to authenticate it. It tells the program that, hey, okay, look for this JSON file that I've created and my credentials are in there. And once the authentication is done, it removes the JSON file. So this is one additional layer of security. Like let's say on Heroku, I've uploaded this. So notice that I will not be uploading this file. I'll be storing the environmental variable safely somewhere else. But for the authentication to work, for the predictions to be able to receive, right? This is instructions from Google. They actually need the JSON files for the authentication to happen. So we've written some code to make the JSON file, but after that, we don't want to store the JSON file there because it could be compromised, it could be hacked, and then it could be leaked. So we remove it, okay? So that's what all these environmental variables are for. Right, so now we can store a couple more things. These technically, they're not exactly confidential, but I think it's just, you can just store them in the environmental variables if you want to be as secure as possible. So once again, where do we get this information? The model name, the version name, and the region. We get them from the sample prediction. Under here, you see all this. You can just copy this, and then you can go back here. You can just paste it here, okay? But make sure you can just delete the input file because we don't need that. That's based on the what the web app receives, okay? And here, just make sure you convert everything to single quotes. So once again, the model name is called fashion as we've named it just now. Version name is version 1. If you've named it anything else, just make sure it corresponds to what you named it to. And finally, the region. We're creating this on the Southeast Asia side of the Google Cloud platforms, okay? Yeah. Once again, if you need any help, feel free to approach us or just raise it in the chat. Right. So once you have these, that's actually sufficient for you to boot up this entire web app. So everything is already pre-written in this web app. So once again, make sure you have all the dependencies installed. If you haven't, please run something like pip install, the requirements for this code for this project, and all the information for the installation and the setup once again can be found in the setup instructions here. Okay, so yes, if you need to refer, please refer to that. And once we have that, this is where it gets fun. So we can just run this. So just run the main application. And once you've run it, you'll be able to see that you have your own, you have a web app of your own actually. So this is really cool. And what we can try is that you just choose an image. Yeah, so here, yeah, you can choose any image you have. You can just go online and download some images in JPEG format. JPEG or PNG, I think all of those work. So just upload here, I'll upload a picture of a t-shirt. And let's see if we can actually get a prediction. And in fact, we do get a prediction. So this is actually, if you think about it, this is the end goal. This is more or less the end goal of deployment. So inside this project here, there's nothing TensorFlow related. There's no ML model inside here. We don't have the model.h5 file. We don't even have the TensorFlow file over here. All right. So it's able to connect to our cloud platform, send this picture over, and get a prediction that is a t-shirt with 99% confidence. Okay. So this is actually the end goal of the workshop. And this is actually more or less what we want to cover today. So once again, just a quick recap, right? So what we've done so far is that we've created a model. So we started off by creating a model on the platform, on GCP. Afterwards, we created a particular version of the model. Then we've copied some boilerplate code over. We copied some boilerplate code, some data, some information about the model itself, but to allow us to access it outside of any Google provided services. So outside of like Google Colab or outside of the platform itself, we need permissions. And how do we get the permissions? Well, we go to the IAM roles. This allow, and then we create a service account that does a specific task. Okay. Once again, this service account, it does a specific task, which you should be able to see. Okay, actually, I've never really checked this one from here, but okay, I think it's a bit hard to see from here. But if you recall, we created a new key pair, and we've also restricted this service account to be able to only send and send predictions and train the model. So we've restricted the permissions as well. After that, the keys, once again, we've downloaded all the information about the keys, and we kept it safe here, so that and how do we keep it safe during deployment? We copied it over to the environmental variables. And then from there, we have code that allows us to build a very simple application that we're just taking a picture. And after that, so it can be a shoe, and then you'll just get a prediction from Google itself. Obviously, this is not a sneaker, but it's only trained on a type of shoe that's like a sneaker. So thankfully, you can interpret this as a shoe. So, right. So that's actually more or less it for the workshop today. Okay. So just a quick recap of everything, a quick summary of everything that we've gone through. So once again, we've gone through everything from pre-processing to model training, tuning, to creating Docker containers, and to finally deploying some our model such that it can be accessed externally, right? So I think that's a very huge milestone. And of course, if you all want more information about so notice that what we've created here is local. This is a local IP address. You can send this to your friends and they cannot access it. But what we have here just now from the SDS Heroku app, this is a public address that everyone with this URL can access, and everyone can upload something. And from there, they can get a prediction. All right. So yeah, this obviously no one says it's a great prediction, but it's decent. So, but the point is, what we have so far is we've deployed it locally. Okay. So we've deployed locally, and if you want to learn more about how to deploy it to the public, this will come with some cost. One of the reasons why we're not covering this is that most of these platforms require money to actually deploy it on their platform. So like I think for Heroku is like the cheapest plan is around like $5 a month. So that's why we're partly not covering this. But you can explore this on your own. There are a lot of great tutorials out there. And one of the easiest ways is just to upload an entire project onto GitHub and just modify, set up some configurations accordingly. Right, so actually, that's all we have for the workshop today. If you have any questions, feel free to raise it in the chat. We'll try to assist you as much as possible. And if you were lost somewhere in between the workshop as well, feel free to approach any of us. We'll try to help you out from there. And hopefully, yeah, from here, you'll be able to deploy your own model and be able to access it externally. And one more thing before we leave, very important, please don't leave yet for those people on Zoom as well. To prevent additional charges. So what's happening, right, is that we've created a model and we're using a service. So notice that if you go to billings, if this is a new account, right, if you go to billings, if you recall, you've actually signed on, linked your debit card or credit card to this. You see that you have credits. So this is $400 worth of credits. Just doing this type of deployment stuff, it shouldn't take more than $5, okay? So you should still have a lot left. They expire in about a year, I think. So you can still play around with this, but to prevent it from charging you while you're not using it, in fact, it will charge you because of this particular step. So if you recall, right, inside when we created the model, we just go to models here. Now, it takes a while to load, but when we created the instance, also make sure, don't freak out if you don't find your model here, like why is there nothing? Because we chose the region to be Asia Southeast, okay? So select it. And this version here, recall that we told Google Cloud Platform to allocate us at least one node at all time. So that was, and you can't really disable that. So the only way to stop it from incurring charges or just let it know that we're not using it anymore and stop charging us is you just select it and you need to delete this version here. So once you've deleted this version, it means that it cannot be accessed from the outside. But from the guide that we have here, from the guide that you can find here, right, to create a version, you can always just create a new one. You can just create a new version anytime you like. Okay. So, but once again, take note when you are done using it. Unfortunately, there isn't like a turn off disable switch. You have to delete it entirely. So you have to delete the version. But the good news is the IAM service accounts and everything will stay intact. Your models, the skeleton of your model stays intact. It's just this particular instance needs to be deleted so that it doesn't incur further charges that could eventually result in charges on your credit card if you run out of the 400 credits. So this is just a safety note that make sure after this workshop that you delete this version, version of the model if you're not using it anymore. And if you want to continue using it, make sure to keep track of what resources you're using and always check the billing report consistently to make sure that you're not being charged for things by just leaving them on and not and you're not actually using them. That's why make sure to always check this page as well. Right. So once again, make sure to go delete your version, and that's all we have for today. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. And we'll stay around for some questions, or else I'll see you all around for the next workshop in the future.